الحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So inshallah we're going to start up here with Sharḥ al-Waraqāt by Jilal al-Dīn al-Maḥallī al-Shāfiʿī. And of course, Uṣūl al-Fiqh is one of the most important subjects that someone can study, and someone will find that Uṣūl al-Fiqh is a beneficial ilm that reaches way beyond fiqh in and of itself. At the beginning of this class, inshallah, we'll talk about a little bit about the authors of this book. I don't want to go into too many details because, of course, this will come up later, because these authors are someone that, inshallah, all of you will be studying from in the future. But it's always good to get to know the aqidah and the views of the people that you're going to be studying from at the very beginning. So, in general, Imām al-Juwaynī, he is of the most prominent Shāfiʿī scholars that came, and he has many works that he has written, and of them Nihāyat al-Matlab is of the major works in the Shāfiʿī madhhab that he has written. And as well, when it comes to Uṣūl al-Fiqh, he has two main works that we always that we would go back to. One of them is the al-Waraqāt, and this is for the beginners, like straight up beginners, and it has found a lot of benefits within all of the circles of knowledge. And this is Waraqāt is a book that has a lot of barakah, and it's easy for people to understand, and it also has found wide acceptance with the majority of scholars. And for all three madhabs, I say all three madhabs, like the Maliki, Shāfiʿī, and Hanbali, a lot of times they will start off with this book. And normally, Uṣūl al-Fiqh is broken into two categories. So we have Uṣūl al-Fiqh from these three madhabs, which is the Maliki, Shāfiʿī, and Hanbali. This is Uṣūl al-Fiqh, and occasionally they're referred to as just a Shāfiʿī. Like when they talk about the Shāfiʿīyyah, when we talk about in Uṣūl al-Fiqh, occasionally we'll refer to all three of these madhahib. And then we have, on the other side, we have the Aḥnaf, and they do Uṣūl al-Fiqh in a totally different way. So because of that, there will be a difference between the way that they will bring up Uṣūl al-Fiqh. They also have major differences. And so when it comes to us, like I guess you could call us al-Jumhur, like the majority, you'll find that we will share a lot of the same books, and this al-Waraqāt is of the books that we'll share. And just a couple notes about Imām al-Haramayn as well. He's named Imām al-Haramayn because he was the Imam, and he used to lead the people in prayer at al-Haramayn. And he was born in 419 after Hijri until 478, and then he passed away, rahimahullah ta'ala. And his name is Abdul Malik ibn Abdullah ibn Yusuf ibn Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Juwaynī al-Naysaburi, and he's Imām al-Haramayn, also known as Abu Ma'ali. And he was born in 1914. He was raised by his father, and his father, Abu Muhammad al-Juwaynī, is also a major player in the Shāfiʿī madhhab as well, a major scholar. And he was one that he studied under when he was young. Like Imām al-Haramayn studied under his father when he was young, and he passed away. And then he also was, when he was about 20, his father passed away, and then he took over his father's position in teaching. And in Uṣūl al-Fiqh, he wrote the work that we're reading now, as well as he wrote al-Burhan. And this work, fi Uṣūl al-Fiqh, is one of the major works that many of the scholars afterwards, they go back to this work and they refer to it a lot. And this al-Burhan fi Uṣūl al-Fiqh is of the major like usul in Uṣūl al-Fiqh, or like it's like a foundational text in that. Also, it is known a little bit about his. So we know he was Shāfiʿī, and we also know that some of his books that we talked about, Nihāyat al-Matlab fi Dirāyat al-Madhhab, is the major work in the Shāfiʿī madhhab. And also this, I believe it's around 20 volumes that is printed by Darul Minhaj, and it's a major work. And someone who goes through it, they will see that he was a very, very knowledgeable scholar, and even like in Loga and all of these other areas, he was very, very knowledgeable, especially when it comes to like fiqh siyasa. He was also very knowledgeable in that, and he has a work that is unparred or unparalleled, which is called al-Umam. And he talks about this. He talks about imama. He talks about what a imam is supposed to have, his characteristics. What happens if there's no imam, which is something that we won't find for most people. Won't talk about what happens when there's no imam. And this is of the books that he'll talk about this in Ghiyath al-Umam. And this is a very, very important book. As far as the aqidah of him, then he is of the major players in the Ash'ari madhhab, and he went very far into ilm al-kalam. And then at the end of his life, he ended up making tawbah from this, and he said, I just want to die. He's like, after I've read like 50,000 books, like then I left the Muslims to their Islam and their outward sciences. I led them to what they have, like in general. And he sailed the deep ocean and plunged into what the Muslims were forbidden from ilm al-kalam, and trying to find the truth. And he used to run from taqlid, or like following people in his early days. And then he said, now I return from all of that to the word of truth. Upon you is the religion of the elderly women, like the ajais. And he says, this is what you should have, or this is what he's going back to. And he says, and if the truth does not reach me by his grace, then I will die upon the religion of the elderly women. And this is at the end of his life where he says this. And because all of the ilm and kalam, ultimately it breeds shak, and it brings doubts, and it pushes someone into a place that the mind can't handle it, and constantly they're wanting to doubt everything. And of course this is not good for somebody. And so he mentions this, and he wants to be he wants to have that simple aqidah that the women, or like the old women, they all believe in, which is a simple aqidah. You affirm what Allah affirmed for himself, and whatever the Allah and his messenger affirmed for himself, you affirm that without making tashbih. And we don't go into that. And he also mentions, don't get involved in kalam. And if I would have known that it would have taken me where it did, I never would have engaged in it. And so then he passed away. He passed away in the 25th of Rabi' al-Akhir, and in 478 after Hijrah. And then also, and so I mentioned some of his major works, and then also when it comes to Imām Jalāl al-Maḥallī, this is the one who's explaining this particular work that we're doing, and he is well known for his diqqah and for his deep understanding when it comes to usul fiqh and also in fiqh, and he has many works that we study, and his name is al-Imām Muhammad ibn Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Ibrahim ibn Ahmad ibn Hisham Abu Abdullah Jalal al-Dīn ibn Shihab al-Din ibn Kamal al-Din al-Abbasi al-Ansari al-Maḥallī thumma al-Qāhiri al-Shāfiʿī. So he's Shāfi'i. He's of the major players in the Shāfi'i madhhab as well. And he was born in 791 after Hijrah, and he passed away at 864 after Hijrah. And of his teachers, he studied Uṣūl under Shams Muhammad al-Barmawi, which is also a major player when it comes to Uṣūl al-Fiqh. He has an al-Fiqh in Uṣūl al-Fiqh, and this is one of his major teachers. And also he studied under Wali al-Iraqi, also another major player when it comes to fiqh and usul al-fiqh. And also he also studied under al-Izz ibn Jama'ah and al-Badr al-Saqiri when it comes to logic and balagha, mantiq and balagha. Also, he studied hadith under al-Hafiz ibn Hajar, and that is of course we all know al-Hafiz ibn Hajar. He is of his students of him as well. Also, some of the books that he wrote that we will go over in a lot of times. This is one of them, Sharḥ al-Waraqāt, and the way that he writes is very concise. And so he will sometimes say a lot with very few words. And so sometimes it takes a bit of us looking into what he said to understand what did he mean by this, as opposed to how we speak. A lot of times we speak in a way that's clear and it's understandable, but we use a lot of words to get across a point. And some of the early scholars, and especially Jalal al-Maḥallī, rahimahullah ta'ala, he would speak with very little words, and he would explain a lot with these words, and he chose them very, very carefully. And so we have Sharḥ al-Waraqāt, that is of his major works in Uṣūl al-Fiqh, by major in like that a lot of people study it. And then he also has a Sharḥ al-Juwaynī that's known as al-Badr al-Ṭāliʿ, and this is of the most condensed works of for Jam' al-Juwaynī. Like this, he made ikhtisar of al-Ghayth al-Hāmī by al-Iraqi, or that's what they say that he did in this. And it's a very key work that a student of knowledge, when he studies Jam' al-Juwaynī, he will definitely want to have this beside him for al-Badr al-Ṭāliʿ. And this is, of course, once somebody studies this with a sheikh, then this person has now gotten he's gotten like his high school diploma in Uṣūl al-Fiqh, if you could say that. But he's accomplished something major, and he's gone over all of the issues in Uṣūl al-Fiqh. And yes, these are sometimes it's a bit hard to read his wordings because of the way he's so concise in it. But if somebody understands what they're reading and then they read it, then it is very easy for them to review what they're reading, because he's not saying a lot, but he points to a lot of issues with the way that he writes. Also, he has a Sharḥ al-Minhaj in fiqh, and this is Sharḥ Minhaj al-Nawawi, and this is also a go-to Sharḥ, which is usually one of the first, which is the first explanation that someone would read alongside of Minhaj al-Nawawi, Minhaj al-Talibin, wa Umdat al-Muftin. So this is the major work in Shāfiʿī fiqh, and he has a Sharḥ on it that is also, as I mentioned, it's very concise. His wording is very concise, and it also points to a lot of the dalil as well, which is one of the benefits of the Sharḥ. And sometimes some scholars, they will go straight to his Sharḥ and explain the Sharḥ with Minhaj al-Talibin as a first step for Minhaj al-Talibin, and then after that they'll go to something else. So instead of just explaining the matan, they'll explain the Sharḥ with the matan, because it helps with a lot of areas, and it brings along the dalil as well. And he has also his other major work that is well known is Tafsir al-Jalālayn. And of course it wasn't called the Tafsir al-Jalālayn because he wrote the first half of it, or meaning that he wrote the tafsir of Surah al-Fatiha, and then he started from Surah al-Kahf and went all the way to the end, and he passed away before he could do the from Surah al-Baqarah to the end of Isra. And then Jalal al-Din al-Suyuti, he finished it off. So we have Jalal al-Maḥallī, who is the author of the Sharḥ. He is the one who first started it, and then Jalal al-Suyuti, he finished it for him. And so that's why it's called al-Jalālayn, Tafsir al-Jalālayn, which is of the most beneficial explanations of the Quran, that is according to one opinion only. So they'll use one opinion, and it's very, very brief, to a point where the amount of words in the explanation, the tafsir, is it's just barely over the amount of words in the Quran, but at the same time it's filled with benefits. Like I've read this, like Jalalain, and then I've also read like al-Mukhtasar fi tafsir, and also when I would read these two, Mukhtasar fi tafsir has a lot of words in it, and it doesn't give me what I would get from Jalalain from like 2 words. Like when you would want, like in some places you'll want i'rab of ayah, or you'll want to know what's the basis of this word, you'll want to know the gharib of this, and just the way that it's very, very concise. This is a great book for someone to benefit when, of course, like memorizing the Quran. They want to understand what does the Quran mean. Of course, running through one beneficial tafsir that's mukhtasar, like, and very concise. This is the most beneficial tafsir that is out there. Of course, with the note that both him and also as-Suyuti are Ash'ari in Aqidah. So when it comes to sifat, many times they will do ta'wil of the sifat in that work. And there's a couple issues, and unlike Imām al-Haramayn al-Juwaynī, we don't have a record that he made tawbah from the Ash'ari Aqidah and Ilm al-Kalam. but yet at the same time there's much benefit from his works, and the ulama that have benefited from the ummah in great ways, we appreciate the work that they have done, and we respect them for their work, and we ask Allah to forgive them for the mistakes that they made. And he also has other works as well, but these are the main works that are well known. Alright, inshallah we'll go into the actual Sharḥ here. So the Imām al-Haramayn, he says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, هذه ورقات, and the Sharḥ says here, قليلة. So he says that these are a few papers, or like a few pages. And so he mentions here قليلة, meaning that's a small amount. تشتمل على معرفة فصول من أصول الفقه. And it covers, تشتمل, it covers, encompasses the knowledge of some of the different chapters of أصول الفقه. ينتفع بها المبتدئ وغيره. And so, and then the beginner will benefit from this as well as someone other than the beginner. So this is how he starts it off. Of course, starting off with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, which is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Whenever he would write letters, he would start off with the Bismillah. And so he starts off with this. Usul al-Fiqh is very important for someone to know, because it will help them understand the Deen, and will help them understand the texts of the Sharia as well as the texts of other people as well. Because this is as one of my shuyukh mentions, he says it's usul al-fahm, like it's this usul of understanding. So how do you understand and take the meaning from the words that are in front of you? How do you take the meaning and extract this out of that? And so this book here, the main purposes that we will try to get from it are, we'll try to understand a lot of the mustalahat, and we'll try to get to know about some of the breakdowns of how different things are broken down, and we will want to get familiar with this, and so that we can understand how we pull out like the meanings from different things. Of course, al-Waraqāt covers many things that are beneficial in usul al-fiqh, and of course there's some aspects of usul al-fiqh without a doubt that have very little benefit, and it's just kind of like someone is out of, like, if something was at like this, then what would we have? Like if there was a certain structure like this, what would it be? Like how do we deal with it? And some of these won't have any actual waqi', won't be actually an issue that you'll ever come across in fiqh. Besides maybe and someone if they're saying something in divorce, or saying that they swear to do such and such. But for the most part, this book here, most of it is important things that someone needs to know, and usul al-fiqh. So he's going to break down usul al-fiqh here, and he mentions ta'rif usul al-fiqh lughatan, and that's I believe this is the muhakkik, and this is not the actual from the actual matan or from the sharh. He says وذلك, meaning left usul al-fiqh. He says in ذلك, like this, the word usul al-fiqh مؤلف من جزئين مفردين أحدهما أصول والآخر الفقه. And so he says here, in this word usul al-fiqh is two. It's made up of two different parts. Mufradain means that they're individual, like they're one by one. أحدهما usul, this is the first one, usul. والآخر fiqh, and then the other one is fiqh. من الإفراد مقابل التركيب للجمع. And so, and what he means here is that like mufradain, he means that each one of these is separate by itself, and that even though, like, well, we have fiqh right here, which is a singular, which is like mufrad. I'm going to say like ifrad is like that this is individual, and so he brings this here alongside of usul, which is, he'll talk about the meaning of usul here down in the next part. And so he wants to break it apart. So we have usul and we have fiqh. So if we're going to understand what is usul al-fiqh, like as one, we're going to break apart first usul, and then secondly we're going to look at this linguistically, and then we'll look at fiqh, and then when we put them together, we will see what does it mean when they're all together. And so the mu'allaf here, he says وَالْمُؤَلَّفْ يُعْرَفُ بِمَعْرِفَةِ مَا أُلِّفَ مِنْهُ. He says al-mu'allaf بِفَتْحِ اللَّامِ. This is the thing that is put together, like you say أَلَّفَ يُؤَلِّفُ, and so this is something that is put together from multiple things. The way that you would know it like يُعْرَفُ بِمَعْرِفَةِ مَا أُلِّفَ مِنْهُ, and you know what this thing that is put together by knowing the pieces of it, by what it was made up of. And أَلَّفَ means putting one thing with something else. So a lot of times you'll refer to a book as mu'allaf, and the person who is writing the book as mu'allif. And that comes from sarf, which means like you're putting one thing with another thing, because you're putting things, like of course putting words together, putting aqwal, or like you're putting different sayings from different people together, and maybe you're putting your own words together. All of this is what would be referred to as like ta'lif, and putting things together. So he's going to talk about the first part, usul al-fiqh, and he says fal aslu huwa al-mufrad huwa mufrad al-juz' al-awwal. And so he says fal aslu, this is the mufrad of usul, and that's the first part of usul al-fiqh. So asl is the mufrad, or the singular of usul, which is plural. And now he's going to explain what it means. And asl ma yubna alayhi ghayruhu. And so this is what something else is built upon it. It is the thing that something else is built upon. And as you would, and he says here, كَأَشْلِ الْجِدَارِ أي أساسه. So a jidar is and so you have a wall. And so the thing that you put into the ground to make sure that foundation that is there, this is what you would call aslul jidar. This is the foundation. أي أساس. Asas is foundation. وأصل الشجرة, and this is the part of the asl shajara. This is the part that is, he says here, طرفه الثابت في الأرض. That this means that this is the part of the tree, like shajara is tree. This is the part that is firmly rooted into the ground. So it's what it's based upon. And and so this is the meaning of asl when it comes to linguistically. So he mentions this. We mention a lot of times as foundations or roots. We could say like, so the first one he says here as like the foundations of like a wall or like a fence of something. Jidar could be like a wall or a fence, or the roots of a tree. Both of these would have the term asl. And when it comes, when we talk about this, and also asl has other meanings as well, like in istilah, when it comes to usul al-fiqh, and of them is we'd say what is al-rajih. So asl also has the understanding of al-rajih, and it also has the understanding of al-dalil, like the evidence between something. So occasionally I'll say al-aslu fi kada qawlullahi ta'ala حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ أُمَّهَاتُكُمْ. And so like we'd say the dalil, what we mean by dalil or evidence for this was referred to as the asl. And occasionally al-asl is al-mas'alatu al-maqisu alayha. And so occasionally we'll have the, like if we were to say we have qiyas, and we'll talk about this towards the end, but we're likening one thing to another thing. And so we know that khamr is haram, like wine is haram because of its iskar. And so wine, we'd say here, is the asl. We'd say that wine here is the asl, and then when we have marijuana, we'd say this also intoxicates. So it takes the ruling of the asl, which is like the foundation or the thing that we're making qiyas on. It's like this thing, so it's going to take the same ruling. So the asl here would be the khamr, and the marijuana would be the thing that is built off of that. We'd say marijuana is haram, even though we don't have a strict, clear text saying marijuana is haram, but we understand that anything that intoxicates is haram, and like a khamr. And so we'd say that a khamr here is the asl, and then this would fall under that. And also another understanding of asl is al-qa'idatul mustamirra al-mustaqirra. And so like the well-established rule of something, we'd say this is the asl. And so like if there's a well-established principle, we'd say the asl is this, or the basis of it is this. This is how things are usually. And also wal-mustashab is another form of al-asl, which is the thing. We don't have any text that says anything about this issue. We don't have a text about this issue, and we'd say like in general, anything that is beneficial is permissible. This is in general. We don't have any other text that says otherwise, so that we'd say the asl is permissibility here. Alright, so let's a bit about the asl. Now al-far', he wants to bring al-far', even though this is not a part of usul al-fiqh, but he brings up al-far' because you know something by its opposites. So he says, والفرع هو الذي هو مقابل الأصل. As we mentioned here, الذي هو مقابل. It's the thing that is the opposite of asl, or that which faces it. So it's like you have asl, then you also have the far'. And this is ما بني على غيره. It's what is built upon something else. ما here is موصولة. بني على غيره. It's that which is built upon something else. كفروع الشجرة لأصلها وفروع الفقه لأصوله. So he says, he gives the example here that this is something that's built upon something else, such as the furu' shajar, and these are the things that are coming out from the roots. So you have the asl, which is like the root, the main body of it, and then you have the furu' that come off and they branch out. So you'd have we'd say the branches of the tree, and also we have just like the branch, the furu' al-fiqh li usulihi, and furu' is oftentimes mentioned as the actual the masail, or like the actual issues that we discuss in fiqh itself. So we're going to talk about water. We're going to talk about what water is pure, what water is najis, and then we talk about different details. These are branches off of a basic foundation, and the foundation is how did we come to this conclusion. And so that's what he says here, and wa furu' al-fiqh, which are like the different masail of fiqh that would study, say it's matan Abi Shujaa. We'll study this is furu' al-fiqh. And we talk about what is halal, what is haram. And then usul al-fiqh is talking about how do you understand what is, how do you get to the ruling of what is halal and what is haram. So he mentions here, now fiqh is the other part. We have usul al-fiqh. So we talked about what does usul mean. It's the plural of asl. Alright, just to go over a quick thing. It's the plural of asl, and so we broke apart asl. We understand that this is the foundation. He also brought far' because this is the opposite of asl, which helps us understand a bit more about it. And it is that which is built upon something else. Whether it's like the branches of a tree, or it's the fiqh that comes from the foundations of fiqh. And now he's going to go into fiqh, which is the second part of that word. He says, وَالْفِقْهُ الَّذِي هُوَ الْجُزْءُ الثَّانِي لَهُ مَعْنًى لُغَوِيٌّ وَهُوَ الْفَهْمُ وَمَعْنًى شَرْعِيٌّ وَهُوَ, and then we'll go to the rest. So he says, al-fiqh, which is the second part, الجزء الثاني, which is the second part of usul al-fiqh, has a linguistic meaning, معنى لغوي, معنى meaning لغوي, linguistically, وهو الفهم. And so this is the meaning of fiqh linguistically. And some people added to the fahm al-daqiq, which means that it's a deep understanding. And some people said no, it means understanding in general. And that's why also I mentioned usul al-fiqh as also usul al-fahm. As one of my teachers, he doesn't teach me usul al-fiqh, but he teaches me tafsir. And also like the ulum al-Quran. And usul al-fiqh has a huge connection with ulum al-Quran. Like you'll find that a lot of the things someone will study in usul al-fiqh is heavily connected with tafsir and ulum al-Quran, because we're talking about understanding. How do we understand the Quran? Even if we're not talking about fiqh issues, but we're still talking about understanding. And so that's why it has a very deep part of that. But of course, fiqh linguistically means understanding. And the ma'na shar'i then it also has another meaning, which is in the Sharia, or like a technical meaning. We'd say a technical meaning in regards to the Sharia. وهو معرفة الأحكام الشرعية التي طريقها الاجتهاد. And this is a knowledge, معرفة الأحكام. He'll talk about this word معرفة in a second. He says it's knowing the أحكام الشرعية, the rulings of the Sharia, that which have to do with التي طريقها الاجتهاد, that which the way to getting to these rulings and getting to the understanding of these rulings is ijtihad. And ijtihad is putting out effort to understand something. And Imām Shāfiʿī, he mentions that al-ijtihad is al-qiyas. And because it's like one of the hardest things for someone to do. Whenever he mentions ijtihad, he usually refers to it as qiyas. But of course, ijtihad is bigger than this when the usuliyun, they talk about this. But since qiyas has such it's very hard, it takes a lot of deep understanding, this is where Imām Shāfiʿī will understand ijtihad. So here what he says is that fiqh is knowing the rulings of the Sharia that come about from ijtihad. From hard pondering and looking at things. And he says here, كالعلم بأن النية في الوضوء واجبة. It's like knowing that niyyah, having the intention in wudu, is obligatory. وأن الوتر مندوب, and that praying witr is mandub. So of course, how do we know that niyyah is obligatory in wudu? We have of course wudu is mentioned in the Quran, but we don't have niyyah that's necessarily explicitly mentioned in it. إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم. So it starts right. If you stand up for salat, then wash your face. Where's the niyyah? And we also have what the Prophet ﷺ says, إنما الأعمال بالنيات, that verily actions are only according to their intentions. Wudu is an action; it's an action of worship. So if we're gonna have it being get taken into consideration, then it's only going to be according to its intention. So we gotta have niyyah for wudu. And then also al-witr mandub, and also witr is not one of the 5 salawat, and at the same time it's highly emphasized. We should do it, but this is not of the 5 salawat, and we know that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that there's 5 salawat, and that there's nothing else that is obligatory from that. Alright, so a witr is not one of the 5 prayers, and the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that to the Arabi that was asking about, is there anything else other than the 5 prayers? Is there anything else other than this? He said no, unless you want to إِلَّا أَن تَتَّوَّعَ. So we understand from this that there's only 5 prayers that Allah has written upon us. Everything other than these 5 prayers is sunnah. And this comes about from taking the different evidences that have come and putting them together. And also وَأَنَّ النِّيَّةَ مِنَ اللَّيْلِ شَرْطٌ فِي صَوْمِ رَمَضَانَ. And also a niyyah, having the intention during the night, is a condition for fasting Ramadan, for the fast to be accepted. Someone has to have the condition beforehand. They have to have the condition of intending the night before the fasting. And this also comes from a hadith as well, that there's no sawm for the person who lam yajma' or lam yubayyit niyatahu, like he didn't intend to have the niyyah the night before. And also وَأَنَّ الزَّكَاةَ وَاجِبَةٌ فِي مَالِ الصَّبِيِّ. And also the zakat is obligatory when it comes to the mal, or like we could say this is the property. It's better to say property than to say money, because it's more encompassing, but the property of a child. So if we have a child that gets a large inheritance, he's got a lot of money, he's got over the nisab. Does he have to pay zakah? Yes, he has to pay zakah, because this is ibadah that has to do with the money itself. It doesn't have to do with the person's body. It has to do with the money. It's the right of the fuqara from the money. So this is something that's obligatory here. Of course, these are different. All of these things that he's mentioning here, they're all different upon. All the Hanafis, they disagree on us in every single one of these. And also zakah, وأن الزكاة واجبة في مال الصبي غير واجبة في الحلي المباح. And it's not obligatory in al-Maḥallī, which is what a woman would wear for beautifying herself, such as like bracelets, necklace, earrings or rings, all of these things that she uses. So like she's using this gold, and normally gold has zakat in it, but since it's gold that's being used, this would not be something that has zakat in it, because it's not stored up gold, but rather this is gold that has a purpose and it's being used. And وَأَنَّ الْقَتْلَ بِمُثَقَّلٍ يُوجِبُ الْقِصَاص. And also that if someone were to kill somebody with a baseball bat, muthaqal is something that's heavy, that isn't sharp. It's not a sharp, it's not like a sword or a knife or something. Someone kills someone with a club or baseball bat, and they kill someone with that. Does this necessitate or give the right of qisas upon this person? Does it do that? And yes, it would, because it's the same as killing them with like with a sword. If someone was to kill someone with a sword, or to shoot them with something that's a pointed object, in this case we'd say everyone would say yes, this person has qisas. But what if they pick up a baseball bat and hit them, or they get a big like a big rock and smash someone's head in with a rock? Is this going to necessitate qisas or no? And so yes, we would say yes, it does, because it's similar to that other thing. Some people would say no, it's not. And so this is where ijtihad comes into play. And as I mentioned, the Ahnaf, the Hanafis, they say the opposite of all of these. وَنَحْوِ ذَلِكَ مِنْ مَسَائِلِ الْخِلَافِ. And from other than this, or like this, from the areas of khilaf, where people have differed upon. And he says, and so all of this, when we talk about the rulings of these specific things, these are something that would fall under fiqh, as he mentions here. That's a fiqh is not the, he'll mention here is what it's not, but what it is these these issues where the ulama have differed upon, and that takes a lot of pondering and looking at and looking at the evidences there and comparing it and extracting meanings from that. بخلاف ما ليس طريقها الاجتهاد. And so he says here, and this is other, like, as opposed to that which the way of coming to knowledge of it is not ijtihad. كالعلم بأن الصلوات الخمس واجبة. Such as knowing that the 5 prayers are obligatory. Everybody knows this. Nobody, he says, this isn't something you would consider fiqh. It comes into fiqh. Yes, we have the chapter titles, but this is something everyone agrees upon. Like this is a consensus on this issue. وأن الزنا محرم. Everyone knows that zina is haram. And so وَنَحْوِ ذَلِكَ مِنَ الْمَسَائِلِ الْقَطْعِيَّةِ فَلَا يُسَمَّى فِقْهًا. And so he says, and like this from other things that are well known that we don't have any debate upon, that there's no question in this issue. So these we wouldn't call them fiqh, even though yes, we'll find them in the books of fiqh. We'll have this come up here and there, but mostly this is just so the book has a flow. Because if we were to take these out of the book, that wouldn't necessarily be. So it has, yes, we need to have these chapter titles here. And then we'll talk about the details. Okay, how do we affirm that this is the hadd of zina? Okay, what exactly is zina? What are the details of it? And then that is what is really what would be discussed as fiqh. And what he mentions here as fiqh, some scholars, they don't limit it to the same thing he mentioned here. He says that some scholars will keep it open. So the areas of consensus, like understanding the areas of consensus that are absolute, they'll still consider this fiqh. And because and what he says here would be understood as the majority of fiqh. Not that only fiqh is only the things that there's ijtihad in, but they say the majority of fiqh is this way, and that's what he's pointing to. And just to note about Imam al-Haramain in this book in particular, he when it comes to his definitions, he's trying to make the student that is a beginner understand what he's talking about more than he's trying to get nitpicky in definitions and have a definition that is absolutely jam' manit, or like inshallah we'll talk about this in later books, but the definition that encompasses everything perfectly and it doesn't encompass anything that's not from the term being talked about. So having like an exact definition, this is not necessarily the point of this book. It's about getting people to understand the basic principle, as opposed to getting nitpicky with all of the details of the definition. So occasionally there is what you can maybe say tasahul in some of this. I like that he's a little relaxed in the definitions. And of course in the Hawashi occasionally they will talk about this and they'll go nitpicky in that, and that's of the things that there's little benefit like to go super nitpicky in some of these things, because you'll spend literally there's hundreds of pages just about the definition of fiqh and why did he use the word ma'rifah here instead of ilm. And then there's a whole discussion about this. So in this first level, we just look at it in general, and then we'll move towards a basic understanding. And he says here, فَالْمَعْرِفَةُ هُنَا الْعِلْمُ بِمَعْنَى الظَّنِّ. And so he says here, the ma'rifah, what is meant here is al-ilm بِمَعْنَى الظَّنِّ. It's like knowing in general. It's not that it's ilm yaqini. Like, because of course these are areas that aren't necessarily, we don't know these of 100% for sure. That's why he mentions here al-ilm, meaning al-dhan, that it's like having like you're pretty sure of this. And inshallah, then he's going to go into Aḥkām, and inshallah in the next class we'll talk about Aḥkām. We'll go through the Aḥkām as-sab'a, and there's also a couple extra ones, but we'll go through them in a little bit more detail. Are there any questions before? Any questions over anything we went over here?
Yes, no problem. But one question before we continue to the next section.
Yeah, for sure.
So in the far'i matters in the madhhab, we say that the rajih is with al-Rafi'i and Nawawi shaykhan. When there is ikhtilaf present in between bayn al-Uṣūliyyin, what do we refer to as the rajih in that instance?
There's not necessarily an istilah that is consistent across all of the books when it comes to usul. So a lot of times they'll say al-asah, and sometimes they'll say as-sahih, which kind of gives this meaning that there's a difference of opinion, and the other is kind of weak. Like if it's as-sahih, the other is weak. And they'll say, and sometimes they'll use the word arjah or rajih, but it kind of depends on the actual author of the book, what he will use. But as opposed to when we have everything after Imam al-Nawawi, we have a certain terminology that we'll use. Of course, like when we study fiqh, we'll talk about the terminology of this, especially if it's in some of the books of like the terminology of the madhhab. We don't necessarily have the same exact terminology here, although some of these terms we will talk about in detail. So we're going to talk about al-wajib wal-mandub. We'll talk about these terms, and some of them are similar to each other. This is talking about terminology in general, as a like studying terminology, as opposed to when there's ikhtilaf, what do we look at in this? But we don't have necessarily that same subject. And a lot of the usuliyin, when it comes to usul al-fiqh, they are by themselves. They're not following an imam, meaning that like they're not muqallid. And if they aren't, if they come to an issue that they don't know, sometimes they'll just stop. Like al-Amidi, he won't choose an opinion. He'll say there's this opinion, this is its evidence. There's the other opinion, there's its evidence, and then he'll just move on without giving his opinion because he doesn't know which one's the stronger view. And so there's not necessarily a way that we go through this, but a lot of times you'll find that everyone will have, the view will be ascribed to the person who originally had it. In the bigger books, they'll say this view is for Imam al-Juwaynī, this view is for al-Ghazali, this view is for al-Razi, and so held this view. Or they'll just say the majority held this view, and then they'll pull out a couple people that went against them. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. The history of usul al-fiqh in very short. We have, in very short, we have originally the Sahaba. They understood Arabic. And they understood when Allah and His Messenger said something, they could understand and extrapolate the meaning of this because they're Arabs, and they understand what is this type of wording, what does this imply. So from their basic nature, they would act upon usul al-fiqh, but they never talked about it necessarily, saying that al-amr, like if we get an amr here, this means that it's for wujub. But the way they talk shows that they understood this, and the way they would come to conclusions shows that they understood this. But then later on down the line, Imām Shāfiʿī, he was asked by people to put together some of the ways of understanding, so that someone can understand this. So Imām Shāfiʿī is the first person who wrote down usul al-fiqh. Not that other people weren't using it; people were using it first. Like ilm first comes out, it's first in the minds, and then it comes out when someone starts writing, or it's first like when people are interacting with things, then it comes into as a concept in their head, they talk about it, and then it comes down into writings. And Imām Shāfiʿī is the first one who wrote it down in his book al-Risālah, which is the first book in usul al-fiqh, which is of the most, it's a beautiful book in usul al-fiqh as well as mustalah al-hadith, and also aqidah. You could almost say aqidah as well, because he goes into hujjat al-ahadith al-ahad, and he goes into a lot of things. There's a lot of aqidah benefits inside of al-Risālah, and this is of the first books that was written here. Also, the Mu'tazila in the very beginning, they got very involved in usul al-fiqh as well, because it's a logical subject. And then they also had a big debates with the Ash'ariyah, and also Imam al-Juwaynī is of the early people in usul al-fiqh, and then al-Ghazali, which is of his students. They have major works that they've went. And then as we come down, we have where the usul al-fiqh originally has the two different branches, as I mentioned. It's either the Shāfi'īyyah or the Ahnaf, or like the Hanafi. And the Shāfi'īyyah has the two branches of Malikiyyah, or like outside of the Shafis, but it also has like the Hanbalis, and it also has the Malikis that come from this, and all of them have different imams and whatnot. And studying like the books and the order of books and which books are the most important ones for someone to go back to. Of course, this will take a lot more time than we have for this in general. But this book is of course, Imam al-Juwaynī, and which is of the early writers in usul al-fiqh. He's not of the earliest, but of course he's of the earlier ones, because he wrote his work al-Burhan, which is of the major works that everyone goes back to. And al-Maḥallī is well known for his explanations. All right, and so and they would put down, but going back from the Sahaba, it's not that the Sahaba didn't know Usul al-Fiqh. It's like asking me, do I know English? Like I was born with English. I can't maybe explain all of the issues to you in grammar and whatnot, but I can write, I can read, I can understand, I can speak it. I won't make mistakes. If someone else makes a mistake, I'll fix them. And so like similarly, the Sahaba and the early Tabi'in and their students, they would understand these things because their Arabic was pure and it was unadulterated. They would understand these things, and also especially the Sahaba, they had something that other people didn't have, that they lived during the time of Wahi. And this is different. They would understand the situation that Wahi came down in, as opposed to someone afterwards. And so when they would understand things, they understood it well, but they wouldn't necessarily write down why they understood it the way they understood. But rather they would act upon these things, and they would only talk about the things that are necessary for them to talk about, and they were big in action. And so later, that's when people actually wrote down these issues, and then they would discuss them and have a big debate about them, and talk about these terminologies that weren't necessarily talked about before as a technical definition.
So, sure. So, at the battle of Bani Khurayza, when the Prophet ﷺ said, "La salata illa fi Bani Khurayza," when the two groups of the Sahaba, they had two different actions on this. Like one of them, they prayed the salat before they entered Bani Khurayza, because Allah says, "Inna salati kanat al mu'minina kitab mawquta," and the other ones they prayed literally when they entered Bani Khurayza. Is this like later on, these two forms istidlal, can we really criticize it because the Prophet ﷺ didn't criticize the Sahaba and didn't admonish any of the two groups?
So we'll talk about this at the end. At the end of this book, we'll talk about if there's multiple views, is everybody right? And the stronger view is that there's one group that is right, and there's the other group that is rewarded. Because they both did their ijtihad in this. Of course, one group is looking at the wording of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is very clear that the salah is not supposed to be done right now. It's supposed to be done over there. And even if the time goes out. The other people, they looked at the meaning of what he said, which was hurry up. And so because of hurry up, they also took that in light of the Quran, that of course, as you mentioned, that it's upon the mu'mineen kitaban mawquta. And so like they have to do it at their certain times. They know the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he said this, he meant this as hurry up. And of course the Quran is absolute in that every single salat has a time. We can't take it outside of its time, so they did it this way. And then the other group, they looked at the wording of the Prophet ﷺ, and they made an exception because of this. After this happened though, this is not a ruling that has a benefit like from a fiqh perspective for us now. Like we're not going to have anyone that tells us don't pray until this time anymore. Like this was a one-time thing that happened. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't get on their case about this and say you did it right and you didn't do it right, because there's no benefit to that. Because this was just a one-time a command that he gave to them in that specific situation. And at the end of it, after he saw this, he agreed that this was that both of them did their ijtihad. There's no sin upon them for their ijtihad. And also there's no need for him to explain what is the proper thing to do in this situation the next time, because there was no next time. This was just a one-time thing. But this does show that they understood things from a deep understanding of whether we're going to take the actual wording, or are we going to look at the meaning behind it in the light of the other text. And of course this is probably the stronger of the views, but both of them showed that they were looking towards what is the closest thing to what Allah has commanded us to do. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Alright, in this next section that he goes into, he's going to talk about the Aḥkām al-Sharia, and he's going to talk about which are the rulings that come across in the Sharia, which he brings up here, 7 of them. And the rulings of Sharia can be broken into 2 categories: Aḥkām al-Taklīfiyyah, which is the Aḥkām that has to do with what is expected of us, or what we are held accountable for. And taklif means like something that is a burden is put onto somebody, or you could say accountability is another way. And some people have a problem with using the word taklif when it comes to Sharia, but inshallah, there's as a istilah, it's no problem, because the Sharia is also it's a beauty. It's something that gives us life, and it's not just only a burden. Some people that have a problem with calling it all taklīfiyyah, but for a technical term, inshallah, there's no problem. So there's Aḥkām al-Taklīfiyyah, which is regarding the actions that we do. What is the ruling of the actions that we do? And then there's Aḥkām al-Wad'iyyah, which is the ruling of certain things that are in existence. Is this thing that's in existence, as he mentions here, is it sahih or is it fasid and whatnot, and like these other things? Yeah, there's a ruling attached to them, but it's not necessarily attached to us in a way of that we're required, that this is a ruling for us personally. This is a required in connection to something in the exterior world. So he says here, al-Aḥkāmu al-Murādu fīmā dhukir sab'atun. And he says like the Aḥkām, what al-Murādu fīmā dhukir, meaning that like from when he says ma'rifatul Aḥkām, so he mentioned what is fiqh. It's knowing the Aḥkām. What are the Aḥkām that he's talking about? And, so the one that were mentioned of Aḥkām, what does that mean? He says there's 7 of them, and he mentions here 7. Sab'atun. الواجب والمندوب والمباح والمحظور والمكروه والصحيح والفاسد. So the first 5 of this, wajib, al-mandub, mubah, mahdur, and makruh. All this is taklīfiyyah. And then the last 2 is was-sahih wal-fasid. This is the wad'iyyah. And also if you were to add to it, if you were to add to this, you would have the sabab, والشرط والمانع. These are the other 3, so that'd be an extra 5, and then that would create a total of 10 for the Aḥkām al-Taklīfiyyah. And also some people add to this also another term, which is al-azima wal-rukhsa. And azima and rukhsa are usually used in contrast to each other. So something that is obligatory, that you don't have any, that is established and obligatory in general, then this would be considered azima. And al-rukhsa is something that you're allowed to take in a special circumstance. It's like an ease in the Sharia that is for a certain circumstance, or what could be, I guess, translated as concession. When in the light of azima, which is the standard. So then going into this, so he's going to talk about al-Fiqh. فالفقه بالواجب والمندوب إلى آخر السبعة، أي بأن هذا الفعل واجب وهذا مندوب وهذا مباح وهكذا إلى آخر جزئيات السبعة. And so he says al-Fiqh is knowledge with what is wajib, what is mandub, until the end of these makruh, mubah, all of these things. Meaning, what he means here, meaning that such and such action is wajib, and this one is mandub, and this one is mubah, and like that to the rest of it. The meaning that the ilm, when we talk about ma'rifatul ahkam or ilm bil ahkam al-sharia, this is knowing that this action has this ruling associated with it. This action has this ruling associated with it. And so he says, fal wajibu min haythu wasfuhu bil wujub. So he says, so the wajib here, he says min haythu wasfuhu bil wujub, in regards to it being connected to al-wujub, which is obligation. And he mentions this because, like, of course, al-wajib could mean like it could have a lot of other characteristics about it as well. But in regards to it being wajib, or having to do with wujub, which is the masdar of wajaba, he says this is ma yuthabu ala fi'lihi wa yu'aqabu ala tarkihi. And so he says this is what someone is rewarded for doing, for doing it, and they are punished for leaving it. And we'll go into a little detail of this. Wajib, lugatan, it means as-saqit. It's something that falls down, as it comes in the Quran. فَإِذَا وَجَبَتْ جُنُوبُهَا, like talking about when people sacrifice on the Yawm al-Nahr in Hajj. So when the sides of the animals fall, wajabat junubuha. So when their sides fall after they've been slaughtered and then they fall down onto the ground, this is wajaba, wajabat junubuha. And so this is called wajiban because this ruling, or like this action, is something that has been firmly established onto this person, which is why it's called wajib. And this is and this term also can be referred to as fard, occasionally be referred to as fard or hatam. There's other words that also mean wajib, but of course fard is or farida, which is like the thing that is obligatory. This occasionally will refer to something that is much stronger in evidence, as opposed to wajib, which is more general. Even if the evidence is something that takes a lot of ijtihad and there's debate in the matter, you'll say it's wajib. And then the things that are well known, such as the khamsa salawat, they'll say that this is farida, because this is stronger. And while the Ahnaf, they make a differentiation between these two, the Shāfiʿīyyah, like as a madhhab, and also the majority of people, they say that they're the same, because they come under the same definition as whatever is rewarded for doing it, and the person is punished for leaving it, or there is a punishment for leaving it, I should say it that way. And so they'd say that these are all interchangeable terms. And Imām Shāfiʿī in al-Risala, and also in other of his works that I've come across, he seems to use the word farida and fara'id similar to the Ahnaf. He seems to use it in a way that refers to the well-established parts of the Sharia whenever he uses the word farida. This is just from my noticing. Whenever he says it, he's almost always referring to well-established parts of the Sharia when he says farida, and then when he says something that's wajib, he's referring to other than that. Although these terms are interchangeable according to the majority of the usuliyin. So now talking about this definition, ما يثاب على فعله ويعاقب على تركه. He says here, ويكفي في صدق العقاب وجوده لواحد من العصاة مع العفو عن غيره. So he says that which is someone is the last part of this is this person is punished for leaving it, or ويعاقب means that there is a iqab, which is a punishment for leaving it. He said this is good enough for the definition for us to say that yu'aqib ala tarkihi. We can say this because as long as there's one person who is punished for this, then this has then the definition is still fine, because we realize that Allah can forgive for whoever of the sinners that He wishes. Of course, ma duna shirk, everything other than shirk, Allah can forgive. So yeah, the fact that yes, Allah maybe can forgive for this person, so we won't say that for sure Allah will punish every single person that leaves off a wajib, but we would say in general this is something that is punishable. And so he kind of pulls that out because of what could be said about the definition here. ويجوز أن يريد ويترتب العقاب على تركه. And he said, and also he could have meant يجوز أن يريد. يجوز means like here, يجوز means it's possible. It's possible that he meant by this that iqab, like the punishment, is something that is connected or comes about by leaving this action. كما عبر به غيره فلا ينافي العفو. And so he says, and this has other people have mentioned this, and this doesn't go against the fact that maybe Allah can forgive. Like it doesn't go against afu, like the forgiveness, that Allah can forgive for whoever He wishes. And he mentions here wal mandub. So we talked about a wajib. Wajib also is known as fard or hatam, and it has other terms as well. And you would say that this is something that must be done. And this person, if he does it, he'll get a reward for doing it. And if he doesn't do it, he's subject to the punishment. In general, the Aḥkām is broken into either do's or don'ts. And then you choose. So there's three. So it's either you do this thing, and if you do it, then this is something that's good. And if you don't do this thing that the Sharia told you to do, then there's two possibilities. Either the Sharia accompanies this command with a punishment for not doing it, or it doesn't punish you. And so if it accompanies it with the punishment, in this case, you're going to have, in this case, it would be wajib. And if there's no punishment for leaving it off, then in this case it's mandub or mustahab, or as will also be said in the books of fiqh, sunnah. And then, so this is another term for mandub. And so you'll be rewarded for doing it, and you won't be punished for not doing it. And then there's also you choose. That's in the middle. You can choose. It's the same either way. In this case, this is called mubah. And then on the other side is don't. The Sharia tells us don't do this. Now, when it says don't do this, this divides into two categories. What if you do it? Are you going to be subject to a punishment or no? So if you're subject to a punishment for doing this, then this is haram. And if you're not going to be subject to a punishment for doing this, but rather the Sharia is recommending for you not to do this thing, then in this case it would be makruh. So you either have do's or don'ts. So you have do's and don'ts, and each one of the do's has either or else or you're fine. And the other one is also accompanied with a threat, or it's not accompanied with a threat. If it's accompanied with a threat, then this thing is obligatory or haram. And if it's not accompanied with a threat, then it's either mustahab or makruh. And I hope that's clear. And then the middle, of course, is the middle category, which is mubah, which there's no threat or reward associated with it. I was going to draw something up, but it looks like my iPad is not connected at the moment to this. So I was going to draw up a diagram. Alright, so wal mandub, going back to what he mentions here, he says, wal mandub min haythu wasfuhu bin nadb. So this action that's mandub, in regards to it being regarded with an nadb, is ma yuthabu ala fi'lihi wa la yu'aqabu ala tarkihi. He says this is what you're rewarded for. That this is something that is rewarded for its action of doing it, and there's no punishment over leaving it. And so so something that is wajib, we say like being good to your parents, something that is also wajib, of course, like salawat and whatnot. And then also mandub, this is something that you would be rewarded for doing it, but you're not going to be punished for not doing it, such as giving sadaqah on the street to somebody that maybe needs it, but it's not necessarily a part of zakah. Like this is something that's mandub. The word nadb is the mastar of nadaba. Nudiba ilayhi. So you say like nudiba ilayhi means like this something was called to. The mandub is something that is called to do, and that's what that word nadb means. And it means that it's called to do it. Mad'u ilayhi. And so that's what you would say like mandub means linguistically. And the other terms of mandub that are mentioned, as I mentioned, they're mustahab, sunnah. And so like these are some of the other terms you'll find that are similar to mandub. That are mutaradifa, like these are synonyms with that. And so also, alright, and also the muhakkak here, he mentions al-mandub, it should be al-mandubi ilayhi, because when you have a ism maf'ul, you normally need to have the harf jar with it to point to it. It's the thing that's called to. It's not it's not the call itself, but it's the thing that's called to. Al-mandubi ilayhi, the thing that's called to. But they got rid of the ilayhi just because this is well understood and well known, and tawassu'. And like sometimes they'll do this because it's understood. You get rid of some extra words because it's understood that it's implied. Wal mubah min haythu wasfuhu bil ibaha. And so the mubah is also in regards to it being something that is impermissible, it's permissibility, ma la yuthabu ala fi'lihi wa tarkihi. And so this is the definition he gives here. The thing that is not you don't get a reward for necessarily doing it in regards to it in and of itself. وَلَا يُعَاقَبُ عَلَى تَرْكِهِ وَفِعْلِهِ. And so you're not going to get rewarded for doing it necessarily, or leaving it, and you won't get punished for leaving it or doing it. Meaning that أي ما لا يتعلق بكل من فعله وتركه ثواب ولا عقاب. And so it means like that which is not connected to any of either doing it or leaving it. There's no reward or punishment associated with it. And also the mubah is also known as yajuz, jaiz. These are other words that will come in. Halal is permissible. And so these are other words that also come to the same meaning, that this thing, you won't be punished for doing it, you won't be punished for not doing it, you won't be rewarded for doing it or for not doing it. But this certain category, there's a lot of talk about it, but this certain category of mubah, you can have a lot of the things that are considered as mubah, they will actually, with intention, they'll take other forms. Because if there are means towards doing something that is good, then you can turn this mubah into an act of worship, such as like sleeping. Sleeping is mubah. But if you're sleeping with the intention to wake up refreshed so you can pray Salat al-Fajr, and so you can study, and so you can learn ilm, and so that you can benefit your family and do the other things that you're supposed to do, this mubah now takes a reward because of your intention. All right, so the mubah is something that if you have the correct intention alongside of it, you can get a reward for it. Also, if you have an evil intention with it, then this can also get you an evil reward. So normally walking is something that's mubah, but if you're walking to an evil destination, you're gonna get a not a reward for this. You're gonna get you can expose yourself to punishment from this. Even though normally walking in general, you'd say maybe is mubah. Also, this is just a little bit about mubah, and occasionally because of the fact that other things are connected to it, some scholars, not a majority, it's a minority, they actually they said that there's no such thing as mubah. Actually, everything is it falls into only four categories, either do or don't. And so that mubah is actually a part of the do's or don'ts. So that you don't do something, you have to do something that's mubah that allows you not to do this. So this thing becomes obligatory. But we'll leave that for a separate thing. But just to understand that this category of mubah, something that is very connected with other things. So almost every aspect that they say of something is mubah, they'll say eating is mubah. Is eating mubah? It's actually obligatory because you have to provide for yourself. You can't let yourself starve. They say sleeping is mubah. Is sleeping really mubah? You actually, if you don't sleep, you're going to harm your body. And this is obligatory. So that's one of the things that they'll talk about. All right, and al-mahdur is also known as haram or muharram, and it's also known as mamnu', and so these are the things that the word mahdur here is it's something that we're supposed to stay away from. And so he mentions al-mahdur min haythu wasfuhu bil-hadr, ay hurma, which means like hadr means hurma, like that this is prohibited. ما يثاب على تركه امتثالا ويعاقب على فعله. What he means here by the mahthur is something that ma here is mastariyah, or not mastariyah, it's a mawsuliyah. And so it's that which you get a reward for leaving it. And he added a word, and al-Maḥallī here he added the word imtithalan, meaning that you stopped yourself from doing this out of obedience to Allah. وَيُعَاقَبُ عَلَى فِعْلِهِ. And there's a punishment for doing it. And so if somebody were, the reason this word imtithalan is very important, if somebody was to leave off drinking because they don't like the smell of alcohol, so they're not going to drink because they don't like the smell. And this leaving off of alcohol isn't because that they want to obey Allah. It's just they don't like the smell of alcohol, and they think it's stupid. They think it's disgracing to a human to drink alcohol. This person refusing to drink, if this is his only meaning, he's not going to get a reward for him stopping him not drinking, because this isn't connected to obedience to Allah. This is connected to him just not doing something that he sees as not good. And like he doesn't like it. He doesn't like doing this particular thing. So the reward only comes about when somebody does this out of obedience to Allah. And when they know that this is haram for us to drink, that they say, okay, I'm not going to drink out of fear for Allah, and you have this intention, then you'll get the reward for this. But he won't. And he also says here, we aqbala fi'lihi. And so there's a punishment for doing this thing. But say somebody, they don't have the intention to leave this thing out of love for Allah. they just leave it in general without even thinking about like having the intention, they're not going to get punished for this. Like they're not going to get punished for this just because they didn't make the intention not to do it out of that. They won't get punishment. They're not subject to a punishment, but they're not going to get the reward until they have the intention to obey Allah with this leaving of that thing. And then he's going to talk about وَيُعَاقَبُ عَلَى فِعْلِهِ. He's going to go into the same issue that we talked about before, which is يكفي في صدق العقاب وجوده لواحد من الأوساط مع العفو عن غيره. And so he says, and it's enough for the iqab, like when he says وَيُعَاقَبُ عَلَى فِعْلِهِ, it's enough for it to be proper or true, for it to be like for there to be a iqab or a punishment for one of the sinners with if in the case Allah only punished one person, say in Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah only punishes one individual for the thing that Allah says, whoever man fa'ala kada, fa'alayhi kada. And so if Allah says whoever does such and such, or like the people who don't give zakat, if only one person out of all the people that didn't give zakat was to be punished, and the rest of the people were to be forgiven, then it would still be like this. It would still be proper, like the punishment that Allah like says is ascribed for this action. It would still be true because He punished at least one person, and then Allah can forgive whoever He wishes from that. But it's not Him going back on His word if He punished one person of this and forgave the rest. So that's why he mentions وَيُعَاقَبُ عَلَى فِعْلِهِ. It's not obligatory and allowed to punish every single person that ever did this, but rather, if they're a believer, Allah can forgive who He wishes with that, although there will be at least someone who is punished for this. Um, and وَيَجُوزُ أَنْ يُرِيدَ, and he says, and it's also possible that he meant وَيَتَرَتَّبُ الْعِقَابُ عَلَى فِعْلِهِ, and that the punishment is built upon its action. Someone who does this, then there's a punishment that comes out as a result, or the punishment is a result of this action. كما عبر به غيره, and فلا ينافي العفو. And so this is pretty much the same thing he said for al-wajib, but it's just inverted for the mahdhur. Because doing every wajib is obligatory, leaving every wajib is mahdhur. So like leaving every wajib is mahdhur, and leaving every mahdhur is wajib. And in a sense that you have to leave it. And so that's why they're connected in that. And also the punishment is also connected in the same way that the punishment was connected there, according to if Allah wishes, He forgives, and if Allah wishes, then He punishes according to His justice. والمكروه is he says من حيث وصفه بالكراهة. The makruh, which is linguistically means disliked or hated. But in the fiqh terminology, it means ما يثاب على تركه امتثالا ولا يعاقب على فعله. It's that which is rewarded for leaving it if someone does this imtithalan, meaning that they do it out of obedience to Allah. And so this person, out of obedience to Allah, he makes sure that that he doesn't he makes sure that he doesn't eat standing up or drink standing up. Out of obedience to Allah, he sits down when he's about to drink. So that's like standing up while someone is drinking is makruh. And so he sits down because of that, he knows that this is makruh. So in this case, he'll get rewarded for it because he has the intention to leave off this action of standing up while he's drinking. وَلَا يُعَاقَبُ عَلَى فِعْلِهِ. And then he's not going to get punished for if he were to do this. There's no punishment that is ascribed with this. So as I mentioned in going back, it's either do or don't. And the do's or don'ts are either accompanied with a threat or they're not accompanied with a threat. If they're accompanied with a threat, then it's either wajib for a do or it's haram for a don't. And if there's no threat involved in it, then it's either mustahab, sunnah, mandub, or that's from the do, or from the don'ts it'd be makruh, and that. And occasionally they'll make a differentiation, a slight differentiation between some of that. We'll stop here for today. Inshallah, we'll talk about sahih and batil in the next class, inshallah. I know we went over a little bit today, but inshallah, you guys have any questions? All right, inshallah. As far as The brother asked in the chat, do we have to memorize this text? If you want to memorize the terminologies that are in the matan itself, this will be extremely beneficial. Beneficial. And inshallah, towards the middle and towards the end, I'll have a quiz to test where you guys are at in that. Inshallah ta'ala. All right. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.